From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaime Hixson. Usually, you see me here with my dear friend Hector Boza. Hector, unfortunately, is going through some health issues once again, but we do hope that he'll join us at least next Monday night. Now, as you could probably tell, we're in our old stomping grounds of Studio B here at Staten Island Community Television. So in the meantime, we're going to see if we can take some phone calls at 718-727-0143. And, of course, we will also be taking all of your questions through Facebook and Twitter, and you can also see some old archives of ours through YouTube. You can see old episodes of ours through YouTube, and you can also contact us on Instagram and Snapchat. Before I start the show, I want to give well wishes to our mutual friend, Rosanna Robertson. Unfortunately, Rosanna has gone through some very, very difficult health issues of her own. She recently got hospitalized because of a very serious medical condition which required surgery. If you can, please send all of your well wishes to Rosanna through her Facebook page. It would be greatly appreciated. Rosanna has helped us out time and time again on the show in years past, and she has been a class act and an all-around outstanding woman. So please send your well wishes over to Rosanna through her Facebook page and also her Instagram account as well, and she would love to hear from you. Well, unfortunately, baseball season has ended, and it wound up ending with a new champion, and that's the Red Sox. And when you think about it, the Red Sox were not necessarily the team of destiny, but they were the team that showed why they were the best in the game. They won it with pitching, they won it with really clutch hitting, and specifically, they won it with the long ball. You look at yesterday's Game 5 against the Dodgers. It was Mookie Betts and J.D. Martinez and Steve Pearce and Jackie Bradley Jr. that wound up getting the big home runs in Game 5. You look at Game 4, which was this past Saturday night, that was the big swing game of that series. And the Dodgers might have single-handedly sabotaged whatever chance they had of making this series competitive by losing Game 4. And when you think about it, this is Dave Roberts' undoing here, because he had a really hot pitcher in Rich Hill pitching for 6 1/3 innings, and then all of a sudden, he decides to go to his bullpen. Turns out there was an untold story about what was going on with Rich Hill in Game 4. In the dugout, Dave Roberts specifically asked him, "Are you okay to go another inning?" And then Rich told him, "Watch me one batter at a time, and then you make the call." So basically, Rich was saying, you make the call as far as whether you want to take me out or not. Rich Hill was pitching some of his best baseball of the season in that Game 4. And Dave Roberts totally sabotaged whatever chance they had of winning that game. Because then came a 3-run home run in the 7th inning, and then there was a 5-run outburst that took place in the 9th inning, and that pretty much was the turning point of the entire series right there. At the same time, once again, Clayton Kershaw had major, major problems winning a big playoff game. And now it's gotten to the point where I think his career might be on the line after this past World Series because he has an option year on his contract, and it's a player option, which means he has the right to say whether he wants to return to the Dodgers or explore his options. Clayton Kershaw has had a wonderful career with the Dodgers. He's won over 150 to 155 games in his career, but somehow the playoffs have been a major issue with him. He cannot win a big game, and this series was no different. He lost 2 big games in the Red Sox series. Now, you couple that with the fact that he's had major back injuries in his career. Is there going to be any team that's going to try and give a big contract to a 30-year-old pitcher with major back issues who has had multiple problems winning playoff games in the past? That's the $64,000 question right there. Plus, the Dodgers have lost 2 straight World Series. Last year, they made it competitive, but there was that 7th game that the Astros just dominated them. And now, just to give you an idea about what happened in this year's World Series, Dodger fans booed Dave Roberts during the pregame introductions yesterday before Game 5. So don't be surprised if you see the Dodgers make some kind of move or decision regarding Dave Roberts. I mean, think about it. He's taken them to 2 consecutive World Series in his time with the Dodgers, yet it always seems to be that one big mistake that he makes that winds up costing his team an important game. Now, as far as the Red Sox are concerned, this is now 4 championships that they've won in the last 15 years. You look at what has happened with the city of Boston ever since the new millennium began. The Patriots have won 5 Super Bowls. Couple that with the Red Sox, couple that with the single titles that the Celtics and the Bruins have won each. That's a combined 11 championships in the last 16 years that the city of Boston has won. You have now seen the balance of power in professional sports shift to Beantown. And this may not be the only championship that the Red Sox win. Something tells me that they're going to be built to win maybe another couple of titles down the road. If they can fix their bullpen a little bit, because the bullpen was a bit of an issue for them during the regular season, I think the Red Sox are going to be unbeatable. And this is where the Yankees come in. The Red Sox won their 4th title in 15 years at the expense of the Yankees and the Astros and the Dodgers. Whereas the Red Sox were built to win in October, the Yankees were built just to get through the regular season. And you see the way that their pitching staff just unraveled in that Boston series. J. Happ wound up getting spanked around. Luis Severino was horrific. CC Sabathia was horrific. Severino has got to learn how to pitch a big playoff game. Because you look at what he did in the Oakland series, the A's wound up catching up to him in the 5th inning of that wild card game. Not only that, but there was also the issue of the wild card game against the Astros 3 years ago. Actually, that wasn't him. That was Masahiro Tanaka that wound up pitching that wild card game. Last year in the wild card game, Luis Severino could not get out of the Twins game without getting hammered for 3 runs. It is time for him to start showing some major maturity and grow up a little bit in this postseason. Whether it's a mechanical issue with him or a maturity issue with him or a nerves issue with him, I just don't know. But it's time that Severino start stepping up his game in October. As far as what else the Yankees have to do, Aside from Severino and Masahiro Tanaka, who probably was their second best pitcher this season, what do the Yankees do for a third, fourth, and fifth starter? I'm already hearing rumblings that the Yankees are going to trade Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray was a big-time flop ever since he got traded to the Yankees last summer. So it's gotten to the point where they're going to have to pick up some pieces in exchange for him, whether they get some prospects or maybe get another slugger in that batting order, because that's another thing. Now that Didi Gregorius is hurt and had his Tommy John surgery, he's going to be out a huge chunk of next season. So what's going to be of shortstop? What's going to be of second base? What's going to be of third base? Miguel Andujar had an outstanding rookie season. Don't be surprised if you see him win Rookie of the Year. Gleyber Torres also had an outstanding rookie season. Is he going to be the shortstop in the meantime with Gregorius out and somebody else comes in to play second base? Or do they go in-house, maybe use Adeiny Echeverria to be the shortstop in the meantime? The only problem is Adeiny Echeverria cannot hit the side of a barn. They need power hitters and sluggers in that batting order. This is something that the Yankees are going to have to really think about. There's also the issue of Brett Gardner. Brett Gardner is in the option year of his contract, 2019 that is, which the Yankees have to decide on. If they decide not to pick up that option, you have just seen the last of Brett Gardner patrolling left field for the Yankees, which could mean maybe the Yankees move Giancarlo Stanton over to left field, have him in the same outfield with Aaron Hicks and Aaron Judge, and have somebody else be the designated hitter for a time. Who knows? There's also the issue of first base. Luke Voit hit some big home runs for the Yankees during the regular season after he got traded, and he became a real fan favorite. Is he going to be the designated hitter, or is he going to be the first baseman? There's also the issue of Greg Bird. All Greg Bird can do is either put himself on the disabled list after being hurt or embarrass himself at the plate, because he has done next to nothing ever since he started wearing the pinstripes for them 3 years ago. These are questions that the Yankees have got to consider now that the hot stove league has officially begun. And of course, when you think about the hot stove league, that is, you've got the rookies of the year, you've got the Cy Young awards, you've got the managers of the year, and you've got the most valuable players of the year in each league, that is. There's also the issue of salary arbitration. There's also the winter meetings that are going to be taking place next month. That's where a lot of wheeling and dealing takes place. And then after that, there's going to be some more wheeling and dealing. And then by the time the new year starts, there's going to be still some guys looking for jobs. They might be able to get some minor league contracts and get invited to spring training. Who knows? Now, as far as the Mets are concerned, the Mets are making the first, I don't want to say splash, but let's just call it news of the Hot Stove League, because it looks like they've gotten themselves a new general manager, and it's going to be a move that's going to be really, really scrutinized by the media. The Mets have decided to make a player agent, Brody Van Wagenen, who also happens to be Jacob deGrom's agent and Todd Frazier's agent, their new general manager. And this is a really interesting hire for the Mets, trying to get someone who's never been in a front office role in any capacity, in any professional sport, giving him the general manager's job. When you think about it, this isn't necessarily anything that's new, because You look at what the Golden State Warriors have done in the NBA. They hired an agent who was representing guys in the NBA, Bob Myers, to be the assistant general manager in 2011. Well, now Bob Myers happens to be the general manager of the now two-time NBA champion Warriors. And he is, ever since he got the job with the Warriors, he's been there to see guys like Klay Thompson and Draymond Green get drafted. He was also there when Andre Iguodala was traded to the Warriors by the Nuggets. And he was also there to sign some really important role players like Sean Livingston. Now, can Van Wagenen do the same thing? Who knows? But I will say this. Hiring a guy who had Jacob deGrom and Todd Frazier in his arsenal, this could probably mean really, really, really important contract negotiations between the Mets and two of his now ex-clients. As far as the Mets are concerned, boy, they've got a lot of work to do in the next 2 or 3 months or so. But let's start with the haves that the Mets occupy right now. Michael Conforto had a solid season for them. Brandon Nimmo also had a solid season for them. The kid that they brought up from the minor leagues, Jeff McNeil, outstanding hitter in his short time playing for the Mets. Now there's the issue of, what's going to be happening with the holes that they have to fill. There's still the matter of first base. Sorry, but Dominic Smith, who supposedly was a really good defensive first baseman when he played in the minor leagues, is not cutting it with me. He has no clue of the strike zone in the major leagues. He looked awkward playing first base with the Mets. At the same time, he's got the right attitude, but there have been some moments where he's shown that he's got a lot to learn about the major league game. So, dare I say Peter Alonso becomes the Mets first baseman of the future starting next year? Who knows? Or maybe they'll use Jay Bruce as a converted first baseman now. As far as what's going to happen with the outfield, well, you have Conforto. What's going to happen with Yoenis Cespedes and Juan Lagares? Two guys who needed a lot of time to try and recover from their injuries. And I just heard that Cespedes wound up getting a second surgery to remove abnormal calcium deposits in his heel, his other heel. He already got operated on, I think, in his right heel. He just needed to get a procedure done on his left heel. Something tells me he's going to be missing a whole lot of time next year. As far as what's going to happen with right field, is Jay Bruce going to be the guy in right field, or are they going to use somebody else? If anything, I would say Brandon Nimmo and Michael Conforto are two guys who have pretty much grabbed their respective outfield spots by the throat. Excuse me. The only matter for the Mets right now is who's going to play center field. Is it going to be Lagares? When he comes back, is it going to be Cespedes? What's going to be your first base? Are they ever going to do anything about the catcher's spot? Because Kevin Plawecki has not necessarily shown that he's been a really great hitter for them. At the same time, Travis d'Arnaud has been either in and out of the disabled list, or he's done nothing whatsoever to try and get that spot. So we're going to have to see exactly what happens with the Mets. If I'm the Mets, I'm not sure exactly what they have going for them on the farm. I mean, So far, they've had Jose Lobaton and Tomas Nido. But other than that, it's been pretty much a no-show at the plate for either of these guys across the board. There's also the issue of what's going to happen with the pitching staff. Right now, the Mets need relievers in the worst way because that bullpen last year was a complete and utter mess. They have to get themselves another closer. That's assuming that Robert Gesellman is not going to be the closer for them next season. If anything, why don't the Mets just explore Robert Gesellman as a starter once again? And the same thing with Seth Lugo, too. Seth Lugo, believe it or not, had a really solid season for them last year. He wound up getting a lot of time coming out of the bullpen. He had 54 games with them, and the record didn't really show it, but he really kept a lot of the hitters at bay last season. So let's see what happens with the closer spot. They need a setup guy and middle relief in the worst way. So the Mets have a lot of stuff to try and work on for next season. Now, in the meantime, they had the NFL's 8th season wound up taking place over the weekend, and to no one's surprise, the Giants looked woeful again. Now it's gotten to the point where, excuse me, more of the cries for Eli Manning to be benched are being heard. I said it before and I'll say it again. Who do the Giants go to if they're going to bench him? Do they go to Kyle Lauletta, a mid-round draft pick who still hasn't taken a snap in a game yet? Or are they going to go to a guy who's played one game in the span of 6 years, Alex Tanney, a guy who I'm not really sure what he's going to bring, but at the same time, he's the wild card in this one. Kyle Lauletta's the other wild card because he still hasn't taken a snap yet. And there's still the issue of the trade deadline. The trade deadline is tomorrow, and there are still more and more rumblings that maybe Odell Beckham Jr. is going to get moved. I just don't see it. You just don't trade a guy with his skill set because I can guarantee he's going to make a contender, a playoff contender, a Super Bowl contender. He can elevate a playoff contender into a Super Bowl contender just by his presence alone. And I also heard rumors about Janoris Jenkins, too. Janoris Jenkins, the guy who they call Jackrabbit, has been nothing but a turtle the entire season because he has been 2 steps slow guarding opposing wide receivers this year. The Giants have already made a couple of moves because not only did they trade Snacks Harrison over to the Lions, they also wound up sending away Eli Apple. Eli Apple wound up getting sent away in a trade. And he was one of the other guys that wound up getting moved. He wound up going to the Saints. And he made his debut with the Saints just yesterday. And the Saints wound up coming away with a big, big victory in Minneapolis in their rematch of last year's playoff thriller against the Vikings. As far as the Giants are concerned, what could we possibly say about them? They still have trouble scoring. I mean, 13 points is just not doing anything for them. And the sad part about it is the Yankees. The Giants actually had their shot of winning yesterday's game because it was close for about 2.5 to 3 quarters maybe. And their just incompetence to try and get the ball downfield wound up getting exposed on national TV yesterday. As far as the Jets are concerned, well, let's put it this way. The Jets are a work in progress. But yesterday, it was a complete and utter mess seeing them get embarrassed the way they did by the Bears. I mean, not only did Mitch Trubisky look like the second coming of Jim McMahon yesterday, but Tariq Cohen wound up getting 110 total yards from scrimmage yesterday. And this, coupled with the fact that Khalil Mack wound up getting hurt and he did not play in yesterday's game, the Jets really blew a chance to try and not only even their record at 4-4, but they really blew a chance to get themselves a real statement victory against a team that's trying to be a contender. So while the Giants are going to have a bye coming up, the Jets once again have to play the Dolphins next weekend, this time in South Florida. And the Dolphins are a team that's gone from 3-0 to losing 4 out of their last 5. So now this is where the Jets really have to take advantage of a slumping team and go in there and get themselves a victory. Speaking of the Dolphins, they wound up getting their heads handed to them by the Texans this past Thursday night as Deshaun Watson threw 5 touchdowns. And this just goes to show you how critical Deshaun Watson is to the Texans' hopes of going far in the playoffs, if they get that far this season. And in other action, the Eagles wound up getting a big victory over the Jaguars in the game that was played in London. And once again, Carson Wentz showed that he is the guy who's going to be their future at quarterback. In other games, the Panthers wound up winning against the Ravens in a game that wasn't even as close as the final score indicated. Cam Newton wound up having a terrific game for the Panthers. And also, Christian McCaffrey played a wonderful game in a supporting role. So, as far as the other games are concerned, I see the Seahawks had no trouble playing spoiler against the Lions, and it was the ground game this time that wound up winning it for the Seahawks. They had over 150 yards on the ground this time, and the Bengals also wound up. The Bengals also blew a really big lead against the Buccaneers, but still got the game-winning field goal in the final seconds. And it was Joe Mixon who wound up having a terrific game for the Bengals, getting 138 yards from scrimmage. And once again, the Chiefs showed why they are the team to watch in the NFL the second half of the season. They're now 7-1 after holding on to beat the Broncos. And once again, it was Patrick Mahomes saving the day for the Chiefs as he wound up getting .300 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. As far as the other games are concerned, just got to check to see what's going on over here. Well, nice to see that the Browns are back in slump mode. They wound up losing by 15 to the Steelers. And what do the Browns get for their troubles? Hugh Jackson wound up being fired just this afternoon. So now, not only did they fire Hugh Jackson, they also fired their offensive coordinator, Todd Haley, who had been the Steelers' offensive coordinator. In other games, the Colts, who are desperately trying to make something out of their season, wound up getting a 14-point win over the Raiders. And slowly but surely, we're starting to see a bit of a ground game from the Colts. They wound up getting over 200 yards on the ground yesterday. Meanwhile, the Cardinals came from 12 points down to beat the 49ers in a basically a ho-hum type of game. And the Rams, how about those Los Angeles Rams, the only undefeated team in the NFL right now? They wound up winning by 2 over the Packers in a game where the ensuing kickoff wound up getting fumbled, and because of that, the return guy is getting ripped to pieces on social media right now. And we mentioned last night's game, Saints and Vikings. The Saints wound up getting a 30-20 victory. So you look at it right now, the Saints and, the Rams first and then the Saints are the 2 teams to watch in that NFC. As far as the AFC, the Chiefs are the team to beat in the AFC right now, which is really saying a lot considering that the Patriots are the defending AFC champions. Now, as far as what's going on in the NBA, tonight, actually any moment from now, the Nets are going to be playing the Knicks. Just last night, see, here's a difference between the Brooklyn Nets and the Knicks. The Knicks hosted the Warriors this past Friday night. They had the Knicks had a 3-point lead going into the fourth quarter. And what happens? Kevin Durant scores 25 fourth quarter points, and the Knicks flat out quit. They all and out quit in that fourth quarter. Mind you, they had a 3-point lead as they started that fourth quarter. Then the Warriors crossed the bridge into Brooklyn and played the Nets at the Barclays Center last night. And what happens? The Warriors wind up getting a double-digit lead, and the Nets actually cut it down to a basket in the final seconds, but then Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry wound up making 2 free throws each to make the final margin 6 points. Whereas the Knicks quit in the fourth quarter, the Nets wound up getting praised by the Warriors for their ability to come from double digits down to make it a close game. The more these guys, the more both of these teams are playing their respective games, the more respect I'm seeing for the Brooklyn Nets than for the Knicks right now. And it has gotten to a point where maybe or maybe not the Brooklyn Nets will be considered a destination of choice for down the road. Not sure if it's going to be a destination of choice for any budding superstars or any current superstars, but right now the Nets have shown that maybe, just maybe, they could be a team to be considered for a future destination for a particular free agent to play, which is interesting considering that a lot of these players had been using the Nets as a stepping stone to try and get a contract, yet now maybe the Nets will be able to turn some heads by the time summer 2019 comes around. As far as the Knicks are concerned, it's gotten to a point where all bets were off with that franchise years ago. Not only do they have a 1-5 record right now, they've butchered 2 games that they had a chance to win and also lost 3 others by double digits. It's gotten to the point where maybe it's time for the fans to try and look elsewhere to get their basketball fix, because this team is not showing any sign of snapping out of it anytime soon. And consider the fact that Kevin Knox busted his ankle and is now out between 2 and 4 weeks, and Kristaps Porzingis still is recovering from major knee surgery. You look at what they have right now, I don't see this team winning any more than 25 games this year. Now, as far as what's going on elsewhere around the NBA, well, at least the Lakers are starting to rise a little bit. I mean, even though they have a 2-4 record, keep in mind who the common denominator is on the Lakers right now. It's LeBron. And you consider the fact that he's got some really, really promising young players to work with, like Lonzo Ball, like Josh Hart, like Brandon Ingram, and a couple of really solid veterans to work with, like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. It's gotten to the point where people should really start to pay the Lakers a little bit more respect than what they're being shown right now. We've barely gotten through 2 weeks of the season, and people want to give up on the Lakers already. Now, as far as what's going on tonight, a couple of interesting matchups are taking place. Well, I mentioned the Bulls before. The Warriors. I mentioned the Golden State Warriors before. They're in Chicago tonight. And speaking of the Lakers, did anyone see that big-time fist fight that took place between Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo? I kept telling people, buyer beware about Rajon Rondo, because the kid just has major maturity issues. And what happens? He gets into a fist fight with Chris Paul. All of this got started by Brandon Ingram committing a foul on James Harden and then shoving the guy away. Now it's gotten to the point where there already are probably some suspensions that are going to be handed down. So let's see exactly what happens there. As far as what's going on around the rest of the league, lo and behold, the Warriors are the best team in the league right now. But what about the teams that are undefeated right now? It's Milwaukee and Toronto. Toronto has gotten terrific play from Kawhi Leonard. He looks like he's 100%, first of all. And second of all, they're doing much better defensively. And Leonard, who's become an outstanding defensive player, he's always been an outstanding defensive player, going back to his Spurs days, is now the guy that's leading the way for them. And, of course, Kyle Lowry continues to play well for them. And they've also been able to add some height in addition to having Leonard on their squad. They wound up signing Greg Monroe over the winter, and they also have Serge Ibaka coming back for another go-around. As far as the Bucks are concerned, it's been Giannis Antetokounmpo once again starring for the Bucks on the court right now. And once again, he's been able to show other people why he wants to be the game's most valuable player this year. Now, there's still the issue of whether he'll be able to coexist with guys like Eric Bledsoe and also Malcolm Brogdon. Keep in mind, they also added Brook Lopez to play a little bit in the middle. So you combine him with Thon Maker, who's a really good defensive center. Maybe the Bucks will be able to make some noise this season. There's still the issue of the other guys who right now are trying to make their mark as the best team in the conference, like the Celtics and the Sixers. There's also the matter of the Pistons. Now they have a full season of Blake Griffin taking the ball the entire time and being the go-to guy. So let's see exactly what happens in the NBA as far as that is concerned. Now, as far as college football, we haven't really talked that much college football this season, and I feel bad about that because there have been some really, really exciting games that have taken place in the college game. And over the weekend, we saw that one of the undefeated teams in the country, South Florida, wound up getting their heads handed to them by the University of Houston. But it's nice to see that some things never change, because Alabama wound up once again claiming the top spot in the Associated Press rankings. So next week is going to be a big, big week in the game, because not only do Alabama and LSU play each other in the Bayou, I think they might put this game on prime time. Yep, it's an 8 o'clock game that's going to be played in Baton Rouge. So naturally, the Tigers, who, by the way, have a 7-1 record, if I'm not mistaken, they quietly have had a very good season, is going to be hosting Alabama, who, by the way, have probably the best player in the country, or if not the best quarterback in the country, Tua Tagovailoa, who all he has done is play the perfect season. Of course, Nick Saban is not going to say he's been totally perfect, but when you think about it, Tua Tagovailoa has not turned the ball over one single game this year. And there's already talk about him being a potential first-round pick. It can't be in April 2019, because this is his sophomore season. So maybe April 2020, if he continues to play like this, maybe he could be the first overall pick. Although I'm a little skeptical about plucking these Alabama kids, because some of them are hit or miss, especially the quarterbacks. Does the name A.J. McCarron ring a bell? But that's one of quite a few games that are going to be dominated on the scoreboard. You also have Georgia playing Kentucky in a game that's going to possibly decide the Southeastern Conference's Eastern Division title. That's a really nice doubleheader that CBS has in the SEC. Georgia against Kentucky, followed by Alabama against LSU. And what lost in all of this, while some guys have been watching games on television, you can also check out selected games on Facebook. There's a website and a sports app. It's called Stadium. You could probably check out any game on the Stadium website right now. The one that they're going to have is in Conference USA. It's Marshall versus Southern Mississippi. But in case you're out in the street and you want to get your college football fix on, definitely check out Stadium's Facebook page. You could get any game at any time. And in this case, the Marshall game coming up this weekend. Now, as far as the National Hockey League is concerned, who would have thunk that the New Jersey Devils would be the better team in the tri-state area right now? The Devils came away with such a huge win over the weekend playing the Panthers, and now they have the Tampa Bay Lightning coming up tomorrow in a game that's going to be really, really big for the Devils. The Lightning are off to a really solid start, and the Devils are too. As far as the Rangers are concerned, they're in the middle of a really grueling road trip right now. Yesterday, they lost a really tough game to the Kings at the Staples Center. And the road trip is going to get significantly worse, because they have San Jose tomorrow night. Then they have Anaheim on Thursday night to complete the California portion of the road trip. And right now, the Sharks are off to an okay start. I mean, 6-3-2 is not necessarily much to crow about, but at the same time, they're better off than the Rangers are. The Rangers are 3-7-1. And, excuse me, a lot of the young players that the Rangers have been using so far have panned out reasonably well. At the same time, you want to be able to see at least a little bit more push from their youngsters. On the bright side, Mika Zibanejad has had a really explosive start to the season. He's got 14 points in his first 10 games, which is outstanding. Matt Zuccarello has been terrific. Chris Kreider has been terrific as well. Unfortunately, they have not gotten the necessary push that they hope to get from some of their younger players. And there's a little bit of contract issues going on right now with one of their guys. Kevin Hayes has already made it clear he wants to be a Ranger for the rest of his career, but the Rangers have not made any push to try and give him an extension and give him the security that he needs. So let's see how much longer the Rangers keep him hanging before he finally gets an extension. Now, just recently, I was able to check out the college basketball circuit. For the record, college basketball season is going to start next week. And there's going to be a really, really hot doubleheader that's going to be taking place at Indianapolis. They're going to have Michigan State and Kansas. Then there's going to be Duke and Kentucky. This is a wonderful, wonderful way to start the college basketball season. As far as what's going on in the local college basketball circuit, St. John's is going to start year 4 of the Chris Mullin era. It is critical that St. John's post a winning record and make some kind of postseason tournament, preferably the NCAA tournament, before anything is decided regarding his future. And having seen what St. John's has coming into the 2018-19 season, it's going to be really interesting how these young kids are going to do, because they lost a couple of kids to transfers. One of their kids, Tariq Owens, wound up transferring to Texas Tech, and another kid, I think Yankuba Sema, that is, wound up being a transfer as well. But with the guys that they lost, there's also the guys that they wound up bringing in. They got Shamori Pons coming back for his junior year. He actually declared for the NBA draft, but then after getting some advice, he decided to return for his junior year. It is critical for St. John's that they get another good season from Shamori Pons. He averaged about 20 a game last year, and he grew by leaps and bounds last season. There's also the matter of Justin Simon. Justin Simon, who's a transfer himself, he came here from Arizona, had a very solid supporting role for them. Brian Trimble III wound up having a solid sophomore season. Another transfer that they had, Marvin Clark II, very, very solid sophomore season for them. Well, I should say redshirt junior season for them. Now they've got kids making their way over here. Some transfers, others that are freshmen that are going to be really, really looking to make a mark for them. There's Sadiq Keita, who sat out last year after transferring from South Carolina. There's also Mikey Dixon, who sat out last year after transferring from Quinnipiac College. And then there's probably the most important addition to their roster this year, Mustafa Heron. Mustafa Heron had 2 really, really good years playing for Auburn. For him to wind up on the Red Storm, and a local kid, mind you, he's from Connecticut. For him to wind up on St. John's after the season that he had was absolutely tremendous for the Red Storm's hopes this year. And coupled with the fact that he finally got clearance from the NCAA to compete this season as opposed to next season, look for him and Shamori Pons to really add some scoring punch to an otherwise very small team. That's one thing about the Red Storm this year, where they while their strength is a lot of strong backcourt play and possible scoring, there's very, very, very little height that the Red Storm can go around this season. So far, their tallest player is 6'9", which means they don't have one single guy who can be a true center for them, and that's really going to hurt them when they have to go up against taller teams. And looking at the schedule that they have this year, in addition to their Big East Conference schedule, which starts in December, they have to play Rutgers, and then there's a doubleheader that they have in Brooklyn. They have to play California one night, and then either Temple or Virginia Commonwealth the next night. Then they have to go to Miami to play Georgia Tech. Then there's Princeton in the Holiday Festival at the Garden. Then there's Wagner College on campus in Queens in December. And then there is probably their biggest test of the season, Duke University, in Cameron Indoor Stadium, mind you. This is going to be such a big test for St. John's this season. Last year, they won, I think, 16 games. This year, they're expected to compete for some kind of tournament. If they don't get the quality play from Shamori Pons and hopefully from Mustafa Heron that they did last year when they had a full squad, I think you could be seeing the last of Chris Mullen as a head coach in the college game. So, hopefully St. John's will have a lot to crow about by the time the season begins. Well, we mentioned St. John's basketball. As far as Wagner College is concerned, last year was a really solid season for them under Coach Bashir Mason. This time, let's see what happens with their basketball team. And I'm going to see exactly what's going on with the Wagner men this year. And I'm already seeing that they're going to have a really, really tough start to their season because they have to go to Seton Hall, who are only the two-time defending Big East Conference champions. And I see that they're pretty much keeping their schedule local for this year. In addition to that, they've got Fairfield, the New Jersey Institute of Technology, Rider University, the University of Hartford, Central Connecticut, and then they start the Northeast Conference season with Central Connecticut. And last year was a really solid season for them. They wound up finishing the year with a 23-10 record, which was really, really great. It just goes to show you how great of a job Bashir Mason has done with this program. And as it turns out, they wound up playing in the postseason NIT, and they wound up losing. Even though they lost to Baylor, it was still a really great end to their season, getting involved to go to a postseason tournament. Now, whereas 23 wins and the NIT was good, this year they're looking to go to the NCAAs. And from what I understand, the Northeast Conference is going to look really, really tough this year. You've got your mainstays like LIU and Robert Morris and St. Francis of Pennsylvania, also Fairleigh Dickinson. Then you have Mount St. Mary's as well, all of whom are really, really good teams. So let's see exactly how things shape up for the Wagner men this year. As far as the Wagner women, unfortunately, things have been really, really tough for them. Just last season, they wound up finishing with a 6-23 record. So now things are going to be pretty tough for them. The Wagner women, They have to play Seton Hall as well. And then the schedule gets really tough. Fordham, Lafayette, Vermont, Yale on Staten Island, St. Peter's. Then they have to play the Army, Stony Brook. Then there's the showdown with the College of Staten Island. And then Northeast Conference play begins. So it's going to be really interesting to see exactly how the Wagner women can do this year. As far as the College of Staten Island, the CSI, leave it to them to always have some really, really solid teams in their past. So let's see how the CSI men and women are going to be doing this year as far as their schedules are concerned. I'm checking out CSI's website right now so I can see exactly where we can go with their athletics. By the way, if you do want to get a chance to check out some really, really good basketball, go on over to CSI and check them out over at the campus off of Victory Boulevard, because they've got some really, really cool things going on over there. Now, as far as the men are concerned, here we are. CSI is going to start the season with Montclair State, which is a program that has always been extremely powerful. As far as what else, let's see. Last year they had a really solid season. They had a 17-12 record, but now I'm going to see if I can try and bring up their 2017-18 schedule. Here we are. They've got Montclair State, NYU, which is super good, and then they start the CUNYAC season with games at CCNY, hosting John Jay, and at Medgar Evers. Then there's Kane University, and then they're hosting the Tournament of Heroes, which is their 17th annual Tournament of Heroes, and then it's back to CUNYAC play. It's going to be really interesting to see how the CSI men will do this year. As far as the women are concerned, I'm going to see if I can bring up their schedule for you. Here we are. The women are going to start their season against St. Joseph's College from Brooklyn. And needless to say, basketball in the city around here is going to be really, really hot. Well, I guess that's going to do it for us. So, once again, if you want to send our good friend Rosanna get well wishes, please contact her through her Facebook page, and also you can get her on Instagram as well. And if you want to share a really good story in Staten Island sports with us, definitely contact us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. And you can also contact us through Snapchat, and also see some old episodes of ours on YouTube. And in fact, we're going to be putting this episode up on YouTube pretty shortly. So thanks to Kenny Graham on the other side of the glass. So for everyone here, for Hector, who could not make it tonight, I'm Jamie. Hopefully he'll be joining us next week. And hope you have a really safe and healthy Halloween. Good night, everyone.